Robbie, boy, how are you? It's good to see you.
Oh, hello, George.
Hello, George. Is that the way to talk to an old cellmate? How about that, Margie?
Look, I was just getting ready to leave. Well, what can I do for you?
Well, nothing. Just because I look up an old friend when I get out.
Lay off it. You're trouble, George, and I'm through with trouble.
Come on, let's go.
Well, I know how it is when you first get out, so if you can use a few bucks, take that.
Well, thanks, Robbie. I'm a little stony at that. Listen, I'll get it back.
No? Don't bother.
Are you going someplace?
Just down to the drugstore.
Okay, Robbie. Listen, will you drop me and Margie off at the bus stop? Huh?
All right.
I'll go in with you, Robbie. Huh?
I thought you were in a hurry to catch your bus.
I'm out of cigarettes. Anyhow, you want to get a magazine or something, weren't you? Sit tight, honey. We'll be right out.
Yes, sir.
Just these.
Anything?
All right, get in the back room. Go on, get in the back room. Go on, in the back room. Go on. Police, stop it!
Any man in town who should have known that I couldn't possibly concern myself with a routine criminal case, it was Harold Stern. During the years he'd been my law clerk, one of his jobs was to keep people away from me. Now, as a practicing attorney, he stood there himself, asking what he knew I didn't have time to give.
Mr. Maris, as you know, this is only my third criminal case. If I go to court with the evidence I have now, Robert Arnold will be convicted as an accessory to murder, the murder of a policeman. He doesn't need a Harold Stern. He needs a Herbert Maris or a Clarence Darrow.
If he's that obviously guilty, why'd you take the case?
But he isn't guilty. I've known Bob since we were kids. I believe him. He didn't do it.
Oh, now, don't tell me that he was framed.
Of course not. Now, look, sir, Robert Arnold made his mistakes when he was younger. It's true, he spent 3 years in prison. But he doesn't owe society a thing anymore. When he came out, I got him the job he has now.
And he just happened to be with George Galt, whom he met in prison, the night that Galt tried to hold up a drugstore, huh?
That's right, sir.
You don't just happen to be involved in a holdup like that.
Robert Arnold was.
Harold, I just don't have the time.
Mr. Maris, he is caught in a web of circumstantial evidence that will hang him. He needs you.
Look.
If you won't do it for him, then do it for me. If you don't, he'll die. I can't help him. I've done everything I can, and I know it isn't enough. Please, Mr. Maris, just talk to him.
All right. Where is he?
The prison ward of the county hospital.
I mentally kicked myself all the way to the county hospital. I knew that if the evidence against a man was so strong that even a smart lawyer like Harold Stern felt he'd be convicted, the man is usually guilty. But I also knew that Harold Stern was honest and put into practice the high ideals he professed. So I convinced myself that I owed him this much. Robert Arnold didn't look like a criminal, but few criminals do. I told him who I was and why I was here. My mind was open. If he wanted to convince me of his innocence, he was welcome to try.
Mr. Maris, I don't really expect you to believe it, but it's the truth.
Stern told me you were driving the car that night. Why'd you pick that particular drugstore?
Just because it was close to where I live. You see, I was going to buy a magazine and then drop them off at the bus.
Miss Margie is the girl you claim was with Galt that night.
That's right.
The police say that Galt was the only one in the getaway car.
I can't help what the police say. Mr. Maris, maybe she got scared and ran when she heard the shooting. I don't know, but she was sure there when we went inside.
When was the first time you were aware that anything was wrong?
Well, I was reading a magazine, and I didn't notice a thing until I heard somebody holler. Then there was a shot, and Galt ran for the front door there.
Who identified Galt for the police?
I did. Guess some people might say I was being a canary, Mr. Maris. But see, I work for a guy named Ed Sparks, and Ed's an ex-convict, too. When he hired me, he said that when you go straight, then you gotta go straight all the way. Then you're on the side of the law. That's exactly where I am now, all the way.
Did it ever occur to you that if you hadn't been an ex-convict, you might never have been arrested at all?
It occurred to me. But it may be true, it may not be, I don't know. Still, I know it was my fault for being there with Galt in the first place. I sure can't blame the cops for it.
I'd laid a trap for Robert Arnold. Most ex-convicts, when rearrested, accused the police of persecuting them. He didn't. It was that attitude and a certain honest frankness about him which persuaded me to take a deeper look into the case. The owner of the store Galt had tried to rob was named Thompson. Mr. Thompson remembered the holdup indignantly, as he had a right to do. The ironic thing was that he'd been held up 3 times in the past 2 months, so the police occasionally staked out his store as a matter of routine. Then I asked him about the girl Arnold claimed was in the car.
Mr. Maris, I don't know anything about any blonde. To tell you the truth, I didn't even see the car. Maybe there was a girl outside, maybe there wasn't.
Had you ever seen Arnold before the night of the robbery?
You mean the fellow at the magazine rack? Oh, sure, he comes in sometimes, buys a little something, mostly magazines. Must have read a lot.
Don't you think it's strange that if a man like Arnold was going to plan a robbery, he'd have picked a store where he'd almost certainly be recognized?
Well, I never thought of that. It does seem kind of funny, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Let's try it again, Mr. Malloy. You saw a parked car and you thought somebody was in trouble.
That's right.
And you stopped.
That's right. To coated her out like.
With $100,000 worth of fur?
And I'd like to know just what kind of a police force we have if a person can't even walk down the street at night.
How old would you say he was?
Who?
I tell you, I was nowhere near that market.
4 people positively identified you. The manager, the cashier, the stock clerk.
I was playing golf at 7:30.
You playing golf 7:30 in the morning don't make me laugh.
Why not?
Take them away. Hello, Counselor.
They get tough pretty fast, don't they?
Oh, they don't stay tough long. That one won't anyway. A few hours in the tank, you'll come up with a new set of lyrics. Sit down. I don't suppose you came here to invite me to speak to the Bar Association.
You're holding a Robert Arnold in the prison ward, aren't you?
That's right. You interested?
Yes, I've been looking into it.
Well, I know you don't waste your time on things you don't think important. But the officer I have handling that case is one of my best men. Do you think he might have missed something?
I talked to Arnold. I think the boy's innocent.
He's an ex-con who just happened to be at the scene of the crime. He was seen coming in the drugstore with a criminal who just happened to be an ex-cellmate of his. He swears he knows nothing about it, yet he left his car parked outside, conveniently, with the motor running.
I thought you said you didn't know anything about the case.
I said I didn't handle it.
So you didn't. But the motor was left running because the battery was dead. I checked it.
Well, Counselor, I never expected a man of your integrity to fall for that old line. That's a stock answer from a criminal like Robert Arnold. Have a sandwich?
You don't want to talk about it.
Oh, there's nothing to talk about.
Would there be if an officer hadn't been killed?
Do you know how safe you are, Counselor? You know there's not a chance in a million that you'll get shot at on the way home tonight, and do you know why? Because my people stand between you and the guns. There's not a man in this room that doesn't stand a good chance of being dead before morning, and they know it. Maybe we do get a little touchy when some gunman kills a cop. We don't like to see them get away with it. And that goes for the people who back up that gunman. And we have every reason to believe that Robert Arnold backed up George Galt.
It's just as wrong if Robert Arnold dies unjustly as it is if a policeman is killed. And I've got every reason to believe that Arnold wasn't involved in that robbery.
Can you prove that?
No, I can't. But George Galt can.
George Galt? The police force has been looking for him for an entire week. I want him real bad. You can look into it if you want to. Who knows, you might come up with something. It's George Galt I'm really interested in.
And so we can just forget about Arnold. When a policeman's killed, you stop being a detective and become a judge, even before Arnold's brought to trial. Tell me, Weston, you shaved Arnold's head yet? Have you slit his pants leg?
Counselor, you're not always right. Show me a piece of evidence, I don't care how small. Then I'll be on your side, but not until then.
All right. I'll do just that. The name of Ed Sparks, Arnold's employer, had repeatedly come up in the course of my investigation. I called on him.
Look, Mr. Maris, you're a nice fellow. I've heard a lot of good things about you. But don't come to me about Robert Arnold. I don't want a thing to do with him.
Why not?
You see this place here, Maris? I've got better than 500 people working for me. 50 or 60 of them are ex-cons. You want to know why they're here? Because I'm an ex-convict myself. 18 years ago, when I got out of prison, I couldn't get a job anywhere, doing anything. But I made up my mind I was going straight. Even I had to make my own job, and that's what I did.
Well, that's very commendable.
I'm not trying to impress you, Maris. But when I hire an ex-convict, I show him this place. I tell him this is what you can do by going straight. I tell him if he works for me, he goes straight all the way down the line. No slip-ups. If he does slip up, makes one mistake, anything more than a traffic ticket, I'm through with him. Finished. Arnold killed himself with me when he got mixed up with George Galt.
Tell me, did you talk to Arnold? Did you see him? Did you get his side of the story?
Now, wait just a
No.
minute.
You just sat there in your big leather chair and judged him. Isn't that what you were just bellyaching about, the way society treats you when you first got out of prison? You're a fine one to talk about cons going straight. You don't even believe in it yourself.
Wait a minute, Maris.
Well?
You know something? You're right. If anybody in this world should know better, I should. Come on back and sit down. Guess I've been getting a little too self-righteous. So you really think Arnold is innocent, huh?
I really think so.
You're gonna have a hard time proving it.
Well, I can't prove it at all, but there are two people who can. George Galt and the girl who was with him that night.
What do you want me to do?
Well, Arnold worked for you. Maybe he told some of his co-workers something that might help. Maybe one of your people knew Galt in prison. Or the girl, I don't know, anything.
You got any idea what the girl looked like?
Yes, she was in her 30s, blonde, name of Margie.
Mr. Maris, I've got men working for me who know places about this town you'd never dream of. I'll talk to them. Might be able to do some good.
Wonderful. And thanks, Mr. Sparks. If you learn anything, just call me at the house, will you?
I will. Good. Oh, Mr. Maris.
Yeah?
I'm not used to being talked to the way you talked to me a minute ago. I'm glad you did.
That night, Ed Sparks brought me the news that one of his drivers had known Galt in the old days. Galt had run around with a blonde girl named Margie then. All Sparks' man knew about her was that she used to work as hostess and taxi dancer in the river district of town and had served a sentence in the state woman's reformatory.
There they are, 3 of them, all Margie's. And you were right. Vice said one of them used to run around with Galt before he was sent up. Now, if your man can pick the right Margie out of these 3...
But if he picked her out of just 3, you might say he was just lucky. But if he picked her out of 7, can I take all of these over to the county hospital?
Sure, I'll go along with you.
We showed the 7 pictures to Robert Arnold. He'd never seen the first 4. But he positively identified the 5th, Margie Cleaver, as the girl who came to his room with George Galt, the girl who stayed in the car when the holdup took place.
You told me that Cleaver dame hung around the river district. Now, if I gave you copies of her picture, do you suppose you could concentrate your salesman in that area for a few days? Who knows? If she's there, one of your men might just knock on her door.
The next morning, Ed Sparks passed out a copy of Margie Cleaver's picture to each of his driver salesmen. He instructed them to call him immediately if they saw her anywhere. During the next couple of days, a blonde woman couldn't move in the river district without being scrutinized. We averaged between 5 and 15 false Margie Cleavers an hour. Not only did they not locate her at first, but they were so engrossed in the search that Sparks' salesman forgot to sell can openers.
It's only $1.50. Don't you want one?
No, I don't want one of your stupid can openers.
Hello, Mrs. Sparks. Hi, this is Hal Auerbach. Look, I just found the girl that we're looking for.
Half an hour after Ed Sparks was told that one of his salesmen had located Margie Cleaver, I rang her doorbell.
Well, hello.
I'd like to talk to you for a minute, Miss Cleaver.
Miss Cleaver.
Miss, if you don't talk to me now, you'll be talking to the police next.
You're not a cop?
I'm an attorney.
Oh, I don't need a lawyer.
Are you sure?
Oh, well, okay. Come on in. Well, what do you want?
Save a man's life. Robert Arnold.
I never heard of him.
And I suppose you never heard of George Galt either.
George who?
Oh, look, Miss Cleaver. A man by the name of Robert Arnold is about to be tried as an accessory to the murder that George Galt committed. You know where George Galt is? I've got to find him.
I've never heard of George, what's his name? And even if I did, do you think I'd blow the whistle on a killer? I got my own neck to worry about.
Arnold swears that you were in his car the night of the robbery.
Yeah, I read about that in the papers. Cops say he's lying.
Well, the police aren't so sure anymore. They've got a theory. They figured that anyone who was sitting in that car, not expecting bullets to start flying, would drop to the floor when the first shot was fired. I'd do that, wouldn't you?
You get out of my house, mister.
I didn't have any trouble finding you, Margie. And I'm not nearly as efficient as the police. And I wouldn't try calling him and warning him. The phone might be tapped.
Get out!
I put in a call to Lieutenant Weston to tell him I'd found the girl. He was out on a call. So I called Ed Sparks, told him what I was doing, and asked if he could spare a man to follow me and keep the police posted. He went me one better. He said he'd follow me himself. It took Margie Cleaver about half an hour to pack. She headed for the nearest bus stop. The operator of the motel, a Mrs. Bacon, said that the occupant of Unit 4 was a George Burke who had lived there quietly for a week and a half. When I gave her a description of George Galt, she said it sounded like Mr. Burke. I asked her if I could use the phone.
Lieutenant Weston.
Maris, Lieutenant. I can't explain now, but I'm at the Brentwood Motel on Westlake. George Galt is living in Unit 4.
Are you sure?
I'm sure, but he and Margie Cleaver will be making a run for it any minute now.
Stay there. I'll be right over.
Lieutenant, if Galt is killed, he won't do Arnold any good. I want him alive.
Well, that's up to him. If he doesn't use his gun, we'll take him alive. Oh, and Counselor, don't be a hero. Stay out of sight.
I sent the motel manager away to safety. I had one hope, that Weston would get here before Galt tried to leave. He didn't.
Wait a minute. That's Maris. George, it's the police. Let him go. They're coming.
Help yourself, baby. I'm getting out of here.
Sorry, Herb. I told my men to shoot only as a last resort. You can see they had no choice.
Well, let's get the girl.
I think my leg is broken.
It'll be taken care of.
Oh, Margie, he left you in the car again, didn't he? You were in the car that night, weren't you?
Yeah, I was in the car. Afterwards, I was afraid...
Did Robert Arnold know Galt was going to hold up that drugstore?
No, neither did I. I don't even think Galt did. It isn't the first time that he pulled a heist out of thin air.
You'll testify to that?
Yeah, I'll testify. I don't owe him a thing.
That's good enough for me.
I think it's good enough for the grand jury, too.